Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a world that almost never makes it into movies, textbooks, or casual conversations, the daily life of caveman women, seen not as a headline, but as a lived, breathing rhythm. And before you get too comfortable, you probably won't survive this. You let that thought land with a small, ironic smile. Because immediately, everything you thought you knew about caveman life begins to soften, blur, and rearrange itself. This isn't about clubs or dramatic hunts or shouting around fires. This is about what actually fills the hours, the steady, intelligent, often invisible work that keeps bodies warm, fed, calm, and alive. And just like that, it's the year 12,000 BCE, and you wake up inside a low shelter stitched together from wood, bone, and stretched animal hide. The ceiling hangs close above you, darkened by years of smoke. Flickering torchlight paints slow shadows along the walls, making them breathe gently in and out. You blink, adjusting, noticing how the air smells faintly of ash, dried herbs, and warm fur. There's a quiet crackle nearby, embers still alive from the night before, glowing like patient red eyes. You're lying on layered bedding, woven grass at the bottom, then softened hides, then a fur pulled carefully up around your shoulders. You feel the texture under your fingers, coarse in places, silky in others, each layer chosen on purpose. Someone has thought about where your body touches the ground. Someone always does. Outside, the wind moves through trees with a low, hollow sigh. You hear distant birds waking. And closer still, the gentle shuffle of animals settling. A dog lifts its head near your feet, exhales warmly, then rests its chin back down. That warmth matters more than you realize. You stretch slowly, noticing how cold air presses at the edges of the shelter, while heat pools closer to the center. This isn't accidental. You are positioned here because generations of women have learned how to read microclimates, how to place bodies, bedding, fire, and stone, so the night doesn't steal too much heat. You inhale deeply through your nose, smoke, mint, a trace of lavender tied into a bundle hanging near the entrance, gently repelling insects while calming nerves. Before we go any further, while you're still half wrapped in fur and curiosity, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like it, share where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now, morning, midnight, somewhere in between. It's oddly comforting to imagine all of us drifting together across time zones. Now, dim the lights around you. Let the room soften. You feel the stone floor beneath your feet as you sit up. Cool but not shocking, warmed slightly by yesterday's fire. You pull a woven wrap around your shoulders, linen against skin first, then wool, then fur. Layering is instinct here, not fashion. You adjust each piece carefully, because energy is currency, and staying warm means you won't need to burn as much food later. You notice movement beside you. Another woman is already awake, quietly feeding a hot stone back into the edge of the fire pit. She does it without thinking, hands practiced, timing perfect. The stone radiates heat slowly, steadily, ancient central heating. You watch as she nudges it into place near a low bench, where someone will sit later to warm stiff joints. There's no rush, no alarm. The day unfolds according to light, temperature, and bodies. You take a slow breath and feel warmth pool in your chest. Notice it. Let it linger, This is where the myth usually breaks down. Caveman women aren't waiting for anything. They are orchestrating a system. Fire management alone requires constant awareness. Too hot and fuel is wasted. Too cool and the shelter turns damp and dangerous. Embers pop softly, a sound you come to associate with safety. You reach for a wooden cup and sip something warm water steeped with crushed herbs. Bitter, yes, but grounding. It coats your tongue, wakes your stomach gently. Taste matters here, not for pleasure alone, but for information. Your body learns what keeps it balanced. You glance toward the entrance, where a heavy hide hangs like a curtain. It's positioned just off-center, angled to block wind without trapping smoke. Someone adjusted it last night when the air shifted. That someone was likely a woman who noticed the breeze change on her cheek before anyone else did. As you stand, you feel how your body moves differently in this world. Every step is economical. Every motion is layered with intention. You bend, gather, smooth, adjust. Small actions, repeated, are what keep everyone alive. You step closer to the fire, extending your hands. Notice the warmth licking your palms, the way it sinks into joints and tendons. This is medicine. This is prevention. Cold joints lead to mistakes, and mistakes here cost far more than pride. Outside, dawn brightens just enough to turn the hide walls amber. Shadows stretch and thin. Somewhere, water drips rhythmically from melting frost. Drip. Pause. Drip. It's a sound that will follow you through the morning, marking time more accurately than any clock. You realize something quietly radical. This entire environment has been shaped around bodies that menstruate, carry children, nurse, heal, and remember. The schedule bends around cycles. Work ebbs and flows. There is no sharp divide between domestic and essential. They are the same thing. You brush straw from your wrap and inhale again. Smoke. Yes, but also rosemary now. Sharp and green, tied into another bundle near the fire. You'll use it later for food, maybe for aching muscles, maybe just for the comfort of its smell. Comfort is not indulgence. Comfort is strategy. A child stirs nearby, makes a small sound. Instantly, a hand reaches out, not rushed, not anxious, just present. The child settles. You notice how calm travels faster than panic ever could. You pause, placing one hand on the stone wall. It's rough, cool at the surface, warmer beneath. You imagine how many hands have touched this same place, adjusting, leaning, grounding themselves before stepping into the day. Reach out, touch it with me. Feel the steadiness. This is where your story begins. Not with danger, not with drama, but with preparation, with awareness, with women quietly shaping the conditions for survival before anyone else has fully woken. And as the light grows stronger, as the fire breathes steadily, you feel something unexpected, not fear, but belonging. A sense that you understand already why this work matters. You take one more slow breath. The day is ready, and so are you. You remain close to the fire as the shelter fully wakes, because you already understand something essential. The fire never truly sleeps. It only dozes. And your first real task of the day is to read it. You crouch, knees bending easily, muscles already warm from the layered furs. The embers glow a deep orange now, quieter than they were at night, but still alive. You hear a soft pop, not alarming, just communicative. Fire talks. If you know how to listen. You lean in slightly, feeling heat brush your cheeks, and you notice how the warmth is uneven. That tells you which stones need turning. You reach for a long piece of charred wood and gently roll a hot stone closer to the center. The sound is dull and heavy, like a heartbeat against earth. Hot stones are everything here. They store yesterday's effort and release it slowly into today. You'll move them throughout the day under benches, near bedding, beside aching backs. It's a quiet choreography, and women are its keepers. As you work, smoke curls upward, thin and blue, finding its way toward a small opening above. Someone adjusted that opening generations ago, testing angles until smoke left without stealing warmth. You inhale carefully. The smell is familiar now: ash, old wood, a trace of animal fat from last night's meal. Not unpleasant, reassuring. Your lungs recognize it as home. You add a small bundle of dry twigs. Not too many. Fuel is precious. You don't waste heat when the sun will help later. The flames answer politely, licking up just enough to brighten the shelter. Shadows sharpen along the walls, revealing scratches, marks, patterns made by hands with time to think. Behind you, someone settles onto a low, warming bench. You hear a sigh, long, satisfied. That bench was positioned exactly where heat reaches without scorching. Someone tested it. Someone remembered. Someone adjusted it again when seasons changed. This is women's engineering invisible. Iterative. Perfect. You rub your hands together slowly, noticing the warmth sink in. Notice it with me. Let it travel up your wrists. Soften your fingers. This isn't just comfort. Warm hands mean better grip, safer cuts, steadier stitching later. Everything begins here. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling branches. You hear it before you feel it, because the shelter buffers sound as well as cold. Firelight flickers in response, shadows dancing faster. You adjust a hide along the wall just a hand's width, blocking a draft you feel on your ankle. Tiny movement, huge difference. Fire management is constant, but it's never frantic. You watch, adjust, wait. You know when to intervene and when to let things be. That restraint is learned. Fire that's bullied becomes dangerous. Fire that's respected becomes loyal. You reach for a small pouch hanging nearby and sprinkle a pinch of crushed herbs onto the coals. The scent changes immediately: lavender, calming, familiar. It's not superstition. It's chemistry and psychology long before either had names. Calmer people make fewer mistakes. Calmer shelters sleep better. You hear soft footsteps now. Others move around you, stepping carefully so as not to kick ash or disturb heat patterns. Everyone knows where not to step. Knowledge is shared without words. A child approaches, curious, and you gently guide them to sit near the warming stones. Not too close. You place their hands out, palms open, teaching them to feel heat without touching flame. This lesson begins early. Fire feeds you, warms you, protects you, but only if you listen. You taste the air again. There's something else now: roasting meat warming near the edge. Set there hours ago so it doesn't burn. Low and slow. Women figured this out too. Fast food wastes fuel and dries meat. Patience feeds more people. You shift a stone beneath a fur bundle. preparing a spot where someone will rest later. Perhaps an older woman with stiff hips. Perhaps someone nursing. Perhaps you. You don't need to know. The shelter works because it anticipates needs before they're spoken. As the light outside grows stronger, you don't increase the fire much. You let the sun take over gradually. Sudden changes stress bodies. Smooth transitions keep energy steady. You learned this watching others, noticing how elders move, how they pause, how they never rush warmth. You sit back on your heels for a moment, breathing slowly. Hear the embers crackle, smell the herbs, feel the heat pulse. Fire becomes almost meditative when you stop trying to dominate it. This is why women are so often its caretakers. Patience, attention, memory. You remember stories passed quietly in the evening, how letting a fire die once nearly ended a group. How another time too much flame brought smoke sickness. These aren't legends. They're case studies. Oral engineering manuals wrapped in narrative. A dog lifts its head near the fire, stretches, then resettles closer to the warmth. Animals understand fire instinctively. You adjust a stone so the dog's fur doesn't singe. Companionship is practical. Dogs alert, warm, clean scraps. Women notice this first. Feed them, tolerate them, trust them. You glance at the ceiling again, watching smoke thin as daylight strengthens. That opening above is adjusted with a movable piece of bark. Later, when the sun is high, you'll close it slightly to retain warmth under cloud cover. This isn't guesswork. You feel pressure changes in your ears, smell moisture in the air. Bodies are instruments. You stand and brush ash from your wrap. Feel the texture wool outside, linen inside. Fire sparks won't bite through both layers. Another quiet choice. Another survival detail. Someone hands you a small cup. Warm liquid again. This time, thicker broth from bones simmered yesterday. You sip. Salty. Nourishing. Fire makes this possible. Without fire, calories slip through fingers. With fire, they stay. You smile softly, just to yourself, realizing how much of the group's safety depends on what looks like just tending a fire. There's humor in that. Quiet irony. The loud stories never mention this part. You kneel once more, nudging a coal back into place. Perfect. The fire breathes evenly now. It will last hours without much attention. You take a final look, committing its shape to memory. Because later, if something shifts a sound, a smell, a draft, you'll know immediately. That's the work. Awareness stretched gently across time. You straighten, feeling grounded, warmed, ready. The day can move forward now. And as you step away, the fire stays patient, glowing, alive, held steady by hands that understand it. You turn away from the fire once it's settled into its steady, reliable rhythm, because warmth alone isn't enough. Warmth has to travel with you, and that means layering the body. You move toward a low wooden frame near the wall where clothing rests, not folded neatly in piles, but draped, hung, rolled, and stacked according to use. Everything here has a logic that only becomes obvious once you live inside it. You reach out and touch the top layer. First soft linen, worn thin in places, smooth where skin has polished it over time. Linen always goes closest to the body. It breathes. It absorbs sweat. It keeps friction from becoming injury. You slip it over your head slowly, feeling the cool fabric slide across your shoulders, then warm almost instantly. Notice that moment, the body adjusting, the fabric learning your shape. This isn't clothing as decoration. This is clothing as interface. Over the linen, you choose wool, not the thickest knot yet. Morning work requires movement, bending, carrying. Too much bulk too soon wastes energy. You lift the wool wrap and feel its weight, its faint lanolin smell. Sheep, rain, sun, history, really. You drape it carefully, wrapping one end across your back, the other across your chest, securing it with a carved bone pin. The pin matters. You test it with a gentle tug. Good pins don't slip. Bad ones stab. You pause for a moment, arms relaxed at your sides, sensing how heat now stays closer to your skin. Wool traps air. Air traps warmth. This is physics, learned without equations. You roll your shoulders once, twice, making sure nothing binds. Clothing that restricts movement costs calories later. Nearby, furs hang heavier and darker. Those are for later when the sun drops, when wind cuts sharper, when stillness replaces motion. You leave them for now. Restraint is a skill. You crouch to adjust the linen at your calves, tucking it just so. Loose fabric catches thorns. Tight fabric restricts blood flow. Women here know the balance instinctively, because they've spent lifetimes watching bodies respond. Cold feet lead to clumsiness. Clumsiness leads to injury. Injury leads to hunger. As you stand, someone else joins you, wordlessly checking a seam along your shoulder. She smooths it once, nods, moves on. This is how quality control works. Quiet, efficient, no praise needed. You notice how clothing varies slightly between bodies, not by status, but by task. Someone preparing hides wears extra protection along the forearms. Someone gathering plants leaves fingers freer. Someone nursing keeps layers easy to open and close. Clothing adapts to life, not the other way around. You inhale and catch the faint scent of herbs woven into the fibers. Rosemary again. Mint. Sometimes lavender. These aren't decorative. They repel insects. They mask human scent when needed. They soothe skin. You rub a bit of fabric between your fingers and smell it more deeply. Sharp, clean, alive. You step closer to the shelter entrance, where the air is cooler, testing your layers. A draft slides along your ankles. You pause. Add a narrow strip of fur wrapped loosely around your calves, tied with fiber cord. Just enough. You don't overdo it. Overheating is as dangerous as cold. Sweat steals warmth later. Notice how much thought goes into this. Not vanity, strategy. You bend to pick up a woven belt and secure it around your waist. The belt isn't just to hold clothing. It supports the lower back when carrying weight. You tighten it slightly, then loosen a fraction. Comfort here isn't softness, it's alignment. As you move, you feel how the layers shift together, sliding without bunching. That's intentional. Women experiment constantly, adjusting patterns, cuts, materials. They remember what chafes, what insulates, what lasts. Memory lives in fingertips. A child watches you dress, eyes following every movement. You slow slightly, exaggerating one step how you tuck, how you pin, how you test. Teaching doesn't always use words. Often, It uses repetition. Outside, the light is fully morning now, pale gold spilling across the ground. You step out briefly, feeling the temperature difference immediately. Your breath clouds just a little. You scan your body for cold spots. Ankles are fine, wrists warm, neck protected by a folded strip of wool. Good. You reach up and adjust that neck wrap, tucking it higher. The throat is vulnerable. Cold air there tightens breath, steals energy. Women learn this early. Scarves are survival tools long before they're fashion statements. You return inside, satisfied, and run your hands down your arms, smoothing fabric, checking seams. Touch matters. Touch tells you if something's off before pain ever arrives. There's a subtle humor in how much time goes into dressing, not because it's frivolous, but because it's profound. Entire civilizations later will forget this, rushing into the day half protected, surprised when their bodies fail them. You settle onto a low bench near the fire for one last check, letting heat soak through your layers. Wool warms slowly but deeply. Linen stays dry. Fur waits patiently for later. You feel grounded, wrapped, prepared. Someone nearby laughs softly at something a child says. The sound is light, easy. Clothing like this doesn't just protect bodies. It protects moods. When people are warm, they're kinder. When they're comfortable, they cooperate. You sip again from a cup, this time water cool, fresh. The contrast wakes you fully. You feel your pulse steady. The day feels manageable. You stand, ready to move into work, into walking, into bending and lifting. Your body feels supported, not armored. That's the difference. Before you step away, take a moment. Notice how your clothes feel against your skin, the weight, the warmth, the way each layer plays a role. Imagine adjusting one fold, one tie, just right. This is what caveman women do all day. In part, they dress the future. They wrap survival around skin, one thoughtful layer at a time. And now, fully clothed and quietly confident, you step forward into the rest of the day. You step beyond the shelter with an empty vessel cradled against your hip, because water comes before almost everything else. Food can wait. Tools can wait. Water cannot. Your body already understands this, even before your thoughts catch up. The air outside feels sharper, cooler, carrying the smell of damp earth and crushed leaves. You breathe it in slowly. It wakes your senses without startling them. Morning light stretches across the ground, catching on stones, turning dew into brief sparks. You adjust your grip on the container, a hollowed gourd sealed with resin and wrapped in fiber light now, but soon heavy with responsibility. You don't walk blindly. You never do. Your eyes scan the ground ahead, noticing where soil darkens, where plants cluster differently, where insects hover. These signs speak quietly. Water leaves fingerprints everywhere. As you move, your steps fall into a practiced rhythm, not hurried, not lazy, efficient. Each step lands where it won't slip, won't crunch too loudly, won't twist an ankle. Women memorize paths the way others memorize stories. Every route, every slope, every seasonal change lives in muscle memory. You hear water before you see it, a soft, repeating sound, like breath moving through reeds. Drip, flow, Pause. You tilt your head slightly, orienting yourself. Yes. Still steady. Still clean. The path narrows as you approach, and the air grows cooler. Shade gathers here, thicker, heavier. Ferns brush against your legs, leaving faint moisture behind. You don't mind. Damp now means cooler later. You keep walking. When the water comes into view, you stop, always observe before approaching. You crouch, listening, watching. Is the surface disturbed? Are there tracks nearby? Do insects gather or avoid water can nourish or kill? Depending on attention. You notice small ripples near the edge, fish, perhaps, or insects touching down. Good sign. You scan upstream briefly, checking for fallen animals, stagnant pools, discoloration, clear, moving, trustworthy today. You kneel and set the vessel down carefully. Stone beneath your knees feels cool through the wool. You like that. It steadies you. You reach out and dip your fingers into the water first. Cold, sharp, alive. You rub a drop between thumb and forefinger. Feel for grit or oil. Nothing unusual. You scoop slowly, letting the vessel fill without stirring sediment. Patience here matters. Cloudy water carries more than dirt. You tilt the container just enough to let bubbles escape. There. Full. Before standing, you bring your fingers to your lips and taste a drop. Metallic, no. Bitter slightly. But familiar. Acceptable. You nod to yourself. This water will serve. You take a moment longer. Though, water gathering is never just a task. It's an opportunity. You notice plants along the edge, edible leaves, medicinal roots, fibers that could be harvested later. You file that away. Memory again. Always memory. You rinse your hands and splash a little water onto your face. The shock makes you smile. Cold clarity. You blink, feeling more awake than any modern alarm could manage. As you stand, you adjust your belt to support the added weight. Water pulls downward, testing posture. You compensate without thinking, engaging core, shortening stride. Carrying water teaches alignment better than any lesson. On the way back, you pause near a patch of stones warmed by the sun. You set the vessel down briefly, letting your arms rest. You're not lazy. You're strategic. Fatigue leads to spills. Spills waste water. Water is work. You listen again, birds now louder, wind threading through branches. You notice how the morning has shifted, even in this short time. That awareness keeps you alive. As you walk, another woman joins you, matching pace without comment. She carries her own container, different shape, same purpose. You exchange a glance, no words needed. You know she's also checking the water, cross-referencing signs. Redundancy keeps groups healthy. Together, you adjust your path slightly, avoiding a muddy section that formed overnight. Someone else might slip there. You'll mention it later, or you won't need to. Others will notice too. When the shelter comes back into view, smoke rises steadily, the fire holding. Good. You step inside and immediately feel the temperature shift. Warmth welcomes you back, wrapping around your damp calves. You set the vessel near the fire. Not too close. Warm water breeds trouble. Cool keeps longer. You pour some into smaller containers, allocating without fuss. children get first access, then elders, then anyone working near heat. This order isn't debated. It's understood. You sip again yourself, slower this time. The water tastes better inside, warmer air softening its edge. You feel it travel down, settling, grounding. Hydration isn't glamorous, but dehydration is fatal. Women know this intimately. You wipe the vessel clean and hang it upside down to dry. Cleanliness matters. Invisible threats are the most dangerous. You learned this, watching others get sick, connecting patterns long before words like germs existed. Someone thanks you quietly. You nod. Gratitude is exchanged, not performed. You glance back toward the entrance, mentally tracking when you'll need to return for more water later. Afternoon heat will change flow. Evening cold will change taste. You'll adjust. This is what caveman women do all day. They move between sources and shelter, between observation and action, carrying life one careful step at a time. You rest your hands briefly on the stone wall, feeling its steady cool beneath warmth. Another grounding moment, another breath. The day continues, and water clear, heavy, precious now flows through it. You return to the center of the shelter with the quiet satisfaction that water brings, but your body already leans toward the next necessity food. Not the dramatic kind people imagine, no triumphant return with a single heroic carcass, but the steady, thoughtful work that actually feeds everyone, every day. Food, here, is a system, and you are one of its architects. You kneel near a low work surface smoothed by years of use. The wood is warm where the fire has kissed it, faintly sticky with old resins and oils. You run your hand across it, feeling grooves made by cutting, pounding, sorting. Memory lives here too, carved into grain. Around you, baskets sit patiently, woven tight and smart. You peer inside one and find dried roots, wrinkled but fragrant. Another holds berries pressed into dense cakes, dark and slightly glossy. A third contains strips of meat cured slowly over smoke, leathery but rich. This is abundance, not flashy, but reliable. You begin by sorting, always sorting. You separate what needs soaking from what needs grinding, what should be eaten now from what must last weeks. Calories are counted without numbers, measured by experience. You know how much energy a body burns in cold versus heat, in rest versus work. Women have always known this. Bodies teach quickly when mistakes are made. You reach for a flat stone and place a handful of dried roots upon it. As you crush them with another stone, the sound is rhythmic, grounding, thud, scrape, thud. The smell releases slowly earthy, faintly sweet. You inhale and smile. These will thicken broth later, stretching flavor and fullness further than meat alone ever could. Nearby, a child watches, curious again. You don't shoo them away. Instead, you slow your hands slightly, letting them see how pressure changes texture, how too much force scatters food, wastes effort. They mimic you with smaller stones. It's messy. That's fine. Learning always is. You pause to taste a pinch of crushed root on your tongue, chalky at first, then warming. Your body registers it immediately, energy coming, steady and slow, good for long days. You move on to berries next, breaking apart a cake and inspecting it for mold. Nothing suspicious. You crumble some into a bowl, add a splash of water, stir with a carved stick. The mixture turns thick and dark. You taste again. Tart. Sharp. Vitamins before anyone knows the word. Food preparation here isn't cooking alone. It's chemistry, preservation, risk management. Women experiment constantly, quietly adjusting ratios, noticing which combinations keep longer, which upset stomachs, which make people sleepy or alert. You glance toward the fire, gauging heat, still steady. You slide a pot closer, not over flame, but near it. Slow warming prevents scorching. You add water first, always water, then roots, then berries, then finally a strip of meat torn into smaller pieces. Smaller cooks faster, wastes less fuel, shares easier. As the pot warms, steam rises gently, carrying scent through the shelter. Immediately, bodies respond, shoulders relax, conversations soften. Food does that. Anticipation calms nerves. You stir slowly, clockwise without thinking. Someone once told you stirring direction matters. Maybe it does. Maybe it's ritual. Maybe it just keeps rhythm. Either way, you continue. Outside, you hear distant movement. Perhaps a hunt returning. Perhaps gatherers with fresh greens. But you don't wait on that. You never assume success. You prepare what you have. You add herbs now. Mint first, crushed between fingers to release oils. Then rosemary, sparingly. Too much overwhelms. You've learned this the hard way. You sprinkle, pause, smell. Yes. Enough. You take another taste, blowing gently across the surface. Hot, but not scalding. Savory, layered, comforting. This will feed many, even if nothing else arrives today. You think, briefly, about how misunderstood this work is. Hunting stories are loud and singular. This is cumulative genius. One missed meal weakens, two weaken more, but steady nourishment builds resilience over time. Women think in time. You ladle a small portion into a separate bowl and set it aside. This one is for someone with weaker digestion. Less meat, more broth. You adjust without comment. Care is often invisible. As the pot simmers, you move to another task, cleaning and rehydrating dried greens. You soak them briefly, then squeeze excess water out. Waste nothing. That water goes back into the pot. Flavor carries. You notice how your hands move automatically now. Efficient and gentle. Years of repetition have trained them. This is muscle memory, refined by necessity. A dog noses near the edge of the workspace. You glance down, smile, and toss a tiny scrap aside, away from the fire. Not charity. Investment. The dog eats, stays alert, guards later. Women understand systems. You hear laughter as someone tastes the broth and nods approvingly. Satisfaction hums quietly through you. Feeding others feeds something internal too, a sense of continuity, purpose, belonging. You serve carefully, starting again with those who need it most. Children, elders, the exhausted. No ceremony, just bowls passed hand to hand. Steam fogs the air slightly, mixing with smoke and herbs. The smell becomes the shelter. You finally sit with your own portion, cradling the bowl in both hands. Notice the warmth seeping into your palms. Notice how your shoulders drop. You take a slow sip. The taste is layered now: earth, salt, sweetness, smoke. It settles in your stomach like a promise. You eat slowly, always slowly. Fast eating steals awareness. Slow eating teaches balance. As you finish, you scrape the bowl clean, nothing left behind. You rinse it immediately. Hang it to dry. Order prevents pests. Prevention prevents hunger. You glance around at the shelter people fed, fire steady, water stored. This is success. Quiet, uncelebrated success. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They transform landscape into sustenance. They turn patience into calories. They make survival taste like comfort. You stand, feeling nourished and steady, ready for whatever the day asks next. You rinse your hands one last time and let them air dry near the fire, because now your attention shifts from food to something quieter, subtler, and just as powerful plants, not as ingredients, but as knowledge, living knowledge, carried mostly by women, remembered in fingers, tongues, and noses long before it's ever written down. You move toward a shaded corner of the shelter where bundles hang upside down, tied with fiber cords, dried leaves, twisted roots, seed heads, bark strips. At first glance, it looks like clutter, but you know better. This is a library. You reach up and brush your fingers along one bundle, releasing a faint green smell, mint. You smile. Your body recognizes it instantly, cooling, calming, settling. You pinch off a leaf and roll it between your fingers, then inhale. The scent sharpens your awareness without jarring it. This will be for headaches later, or nausea, or simply comfort. You move to another bundle, lavender, softer, sweet. You crumble a bit and let the dust fall onto your palm. You don't rush to use it. You just smell. Lavender doesn't rush either. It waits until people are ready to slow down. Plants are patient teachers. You kneel beside a shallow basket filled with roots and rhizomes, each labeled only in your memory. No one else needs to know every name. That would be dangerous. Knowledge here is shared deliberately enough to help, never enough to harm. You select one root and scrape its outer layer gently with a stone blade. The flesh beneath is pale and moist. You lick the blade lightly. Bitter. That tells you something. Bitter often heals. Bitter often protects. Sweet feeds. Sour cleans. Women learn flavor like language. You think back to when you first learned this watching an older woman taste something. Pause, then nod. No explanations, just trust. Built over years of observation. Trial and error measured not in grades, but in lives. You slice the root into thin pieces and lay them on a flat stone near warmth, not fire. Too much heat kills potency. You learned that when a batch once failed to work, and someone's fever lasted longer than it should have. You don't forget lessons like that. As you work, you hum softly, not a song, just a tone. Rhythm keeps hands steady. It also tells others you're focused, not to interrupt unless necessary. Sound is communication. A child approaches again, always curious, and you hand them a leaf, inviting them to smell. Their face wrinkles. Bitter. You nod, not for eating. You say gently, for helping. They repeat the words carefully, filing them away. Knowledge continues. You take a moment to grind dried bark into powder, the stone moving in slow circles. The smell is woody, almost smoky. This one stops bleeding when mixed with water. You set it aside in a small container made from folded bark. Simple, effective. You glance toward the entrance. Light has shifted again. Midday approaches. With it, headaches from glare, sore muscles from work, anxious energy from hunger, now satisfied, but bodies still busy. You anticipate needs before they're spoken. That's the real skill. You prepare a small infusion. Warm water poured over crushed herbs and let it steep near the fire. The steam rises gently, carrying scent through the shelter. Immediately, shoulders drop. Someone sighs. You don't announce what it's for. They trust you. Plants work on minds as much as bodies. Women notice this early. A calm group survives longer than a tense one. You taste the infusion carefully. Too strong. You add more water. Balance matters. Too much healing becomes harm. Too little becomes useless. You aim for just enough. As the mixture cools, you think about how often this knowledge is dismissed later as instinct or guesswork. You smile softly at the irony. This is empirical science observation, repetition, adjustment carried out over thousands of years without ego. You distribute the drink in small cups. Not everyone needs it. You watch faces. You learn who responds quickly, who slowly, who needs something different next time. Patterns emerge. You sit briefly, letting your own body rest. You rub a dab of crushed mint onto your temples. The cooling sensation spreads immediately. Relief blooms. You close your eyes for a moment. Plants reward patience. Outside, insects hum. Inside, fire crackles. Between them, you work quietly, cataloging, preparing, remembering. You tidy the bundles, retying loose cords, checking for moisture. Mold ruins medicine. Prevention saves effort. You hang one bundle slightly higher away from damp air near the floor. Another you move closer to warmth. Micro adjustments. Constant. A dog wanders past and sneezes at the scent. You laugh softly. Not all medicine is pleasant. That's fine. You pause and reflect, just briefly, on how this role shapes identity. You aren't just helping. You are a living archive, a moving pharmacy, a bridge between environment and survival. When illness comes, and it always does, people will look to you without drama. You'll respond without ceremony. That calm exchange saves lives more reliably than any heroics. You stand again, stretching slowly, feeling how your body responds to the work, steady, grounded, warm. You take a breath and notice the lingering scents on your hands. Mint, bark, lavender, earth. Before moving on, take a moment with me. Imagine crushing a leaf between your fingers. Smell it. Feel the oil slick your skin. Let the scent travel upward, softening your thoughts. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They listen to the land. They translate plants into relief. They turn bitterness into balance. And when the day grows harder, as it always does, this quiet knowledge will be ready. You barely notice when the first child presses against your side, because closeness is constant here. Children are not scheduled. They orbit. And your body has learned to make room for them without stopping what you're doing. A small weight leans into your hip, warm through layers of linen and wool. You adjust your stance automatically, widening your feet just enough to stay balanced. The child settles, satisfied, thumb finding a familiar place near their mouth. Their breath evens out. You keep working. Children are always nearby, not because there's nowhere else to put them, but because proximity is the safest place they can be. You feel their presence the way you feel the fire, something to be aware of, not something that interrupts. You continue sorting plant bundles, one hand steady, the other occasionally smoothing a child's hair. Touch here is constant, casual, grounding. It regulates nervous systems before anyone understands the concept. A calm adult body teaches a calm child body. Women learn this by living it. Another child approaches, older, curious, carrying a broken tool handle. You glance down, immediately assessing. You take it, turn it in your hands, feel the splinter. Too dry. You murmur. You show them where it cracked, how grain matters. You don't scold. You explain just enough. You reach for a strip of fiber and begin wrapping the handle, reinforcing it. The child watches closely, mimicking the motion in the air. Teaching happens in these moments, small, unannounced, constant. Behind you, an infant fusses. Before the sound grows, you turn slightly, adjusting your wrap so the baby is supported more securely against your chest. Their weight presses warmly, familiar. You sway once, twice, slow and rhythmic. The fussing dissolves. No one comments. This is normal. You notice how your work rhythm shifts slightly when carrying a child slower, more deliberate. You plan movements in advance. Bend carefully. Turn smoothly. Efficiency now includes gentleness. Children shape posture, attention, time itself. You move toward the fire to warm the infant's feet, careful not to get too close. You feel their toes through the fabric, cold but warming quickly. You hum softly, a low sound that vibrates through your chest. The baby responds by relaxing further. Sound travels through bone. Women know this without needing proof. An older woman passes and adjusts the edge of your wrap, tightening a knot you didn't notice, loosening. You nod your thanks. Care moves in both directions here. No one does this alone. You resume your task, repairing a basket, fingers moving deftly, even with a child resting against you. You weave, tuck, pull. The basket takes shape again. Broken things don't get discarded if they can be fixed. Resources are limited. So is waste. A child nearby trips and scrapes a knee. The sound they make is sharp, more surprise than pain. You're already reaching for a bit of crushed bark and water, kneeling to their level. You clean the scrape gently, apply the mixture. The bleeding slows. The child watches, fascinated. Fear fades into curiosity. You meet their eyes and smile. You're okay, you say quietly. Your tone matters more than the medicine. They nod, believing you completely. Trust is built like this moment by moment. Children here learn by being included, not isolated. They see everything: food preparation, tool repair, plant medicine, fire tending. They absorb it all long before anyone tests them. You notice how their play mirrors adult tasks: stacking stones, stirring imaginary pots, wrapping sticks in fiber. This is education without classrooms, practice without pressure. As the day moves forward, you shift roles fluidly: caregiver, worker, teacher, Comforter, no announcements, no titles, just responsiveness. You take a moment to sit, letting several children cluster near you, leaning, touching, fidgeting. You don't push them away. Physical closeness strengthens immunity, confidence, belonging. Women notice this long before anyone measures it. You listen as one child asks a question: why smoke goes up, why plants taste bitter, why dogs stay near fire. You answer simply, honestly, because heat rises, because bitterness helps, because warmth feels good. No myths yet. Truth works just fine. A baby stirs again, rooting instinctively. You adjust your layers, providing access smoothly, without fuss. Feeding happens alongside conversation, alongside work. Bodies are not hidden here. They are functional, respected. You notice how this constant caregiving doesn't exhaust you the way people later imagine. It integrates. It gives rhythm. It slows time just enough to make it manageable. Yes, it's demanding, but it's also grounding. Children anchor attention in the present. They force you to notice temperature, posture, tone. They keep you embodied. You stand and walk slowly toward the shelter entrance, letting children scatter ahead of you like birds. You watch them move awkward, joyful, learning balance. You smile softly. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They hold the future against their bodies while keeping the present functioning. They multitask not because they're forced to, but because life here is layered, just like clothing. Before moving on, take a breath with me. Notice your shoulders. Notice your hands. Imagine the weight of a child leaning into you, warm, trusting, alive. This is survival too. You ease the last child gently onto a warmed patch of bedding and straighten slowly, because now your attention shifts again away from bodies and toward objects. Tools, quiet, unglamorous things that decide whether a day flows smoothly or collapses into frustration. You move to a corner of the shelter where stone, bone, wood, and fiber wait in small, purposeful clusters. Nothing here is random. Everything is positioned by frequency of use, weight, and danger. Sharp things stay separate. Fragile things are tucked away. You didn't label any of it. Your hands remember. You pick up a stone scraper first, running your thumb carefully along its edge without pressing. Still sharp, but uneven. You tilt it toward the light, watching how the edge catches brightness. Tiny chips tell you where it's weak. Tools speak visually if you know how to look. You sit cross-legged on the ground, feeling the stone beneath you cool through your layers. You brace the scraper against a piece of leather and begin retouching the edge with a smaller stone. Tap, rotate, tap. The sound is precise, rhythmic, almost musical. You don't rush. Rushed tools fail at the worst moment. As you work, you smell old hide, mineral dust, faint smoke. These smells mean continuity. Someone else will use this scraper later to clean a skin, cut cord, prepare food. Your work extends forward in time. You test the edge again, this time slicing gently into a scrap of fiber. Clean, efficient, good. Next, you reach for a needle made from bone. You examine the eye carefully, clearing it with a thin sliver of wood. A blocked eye tears fiber. Torn fiber wastes time. Time wastes energy. Everything connects. You thread the needle with sinew softened earlier in water. You pull it through a folded piece of hide, repairing a tear near the shoulder of a wrap. The tear isn't dramatic, but left unattended, it would grow. Women here understand entropy intimately. Small problems become big ones if ignored. Your stitches are tight, even angled just so. You learned this watching others, noticing which seams last longest. No one praises good stitching. They only notice when it fails. You prefer invisibility. A child wanders over again, holding a blunt stone. Broken, they say. You smile and gesture for them to sit. You take the stone, turn it over, show them where it can still be used. Not broken. You correct gently. Different job now. You demonstrate how it's better for pounding than cutting. The child's eyes light up. Salvage is a revelation. You hand it back and watch them test it on dried roots. Success. Knowledge spreads. You move on to cords, next checking knots, retightening, replacing frayed sections. Fiber degrades quietly. You catch it before it snaps under load. You've seen what happens when a carrying strap fails mid-walk. Spilled water, lost food, injured backs. You hum softly again, the same low tone from earlier. It keeps your hands steady. It also lets others know this is a focused moment. No interruptions unless urgent. You glance up briefly to check the fire. Still steady. You glance toward the entrance. Light shifting again. Afternoon soon. You repair a wooden handle by heating it slightly near the fire, then reshaping it with pressure while it's warm. Wood remembers heat. You hold it until it cools, setting its new form. Simple thermodynamics, learned by touch. You smell faint burning and move the handle away instantly. Too much. You laugh quietly at yourself. Even experts adjust. You set the handle aside and rub your hands together, feeling the residue of resin and ash. You wipe them on a scrap of hide, keeping tools clean. Clean tools last longer. As you work, you reflect briefly on how this labor disappears from stories. No one sings songs about tool maintenance, but without it, everything stops. Food doesn't get processed. Clothing fails. Fire becomes dangerous. This is the skeleton of daily life. You finish the last repair and lay tools back in their places, aligned, ready. Order isn't obsession. It's accessibility. In an emergency, you don't want to search. You stretch slowly, feeling your spine unwind. Your fingers ache slightly, a good ache. Productive. You flex them gently near the fire, letting warmth ease joints. Notice how relief spreads. Notice how small comforts sustain long work. You take a breath and look around. Children playing, someone napping, someone stirring a pot. Tools ready, systems intact. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They maintain the infrastructure of survival quietly, patiently, with hands that understand both materials and consequences. Before we move on, pause with me. Imagine holding a tool you repaired yourself. Feel its balance, its readiness. The confidence that comes from knowing it won't fail you. That feeling lasts longer than any story about heroics. You step back from the tools and let your eyes travel across the shelter. Because now the work becomes architectural, not in the dramatic sense of building something new, but in the constant, subtle shaping of space that turns a rough structure into a livable world. Shelter is never finished. It breathes, shifts, ages, and you are always adjusting it. You walk slowly along the inner wall, fingers trailing lightly over stone and hide. You feel for temperature changes first, cool spots, drafts, moisture. Your skin is more sensitive than any instrument. You pause where the air feels just a little sharper against your knuckles. There, a seam has loosened. You crouch and examine the join where two hides overlap. Overnight, the wind must have pulled at it, opening a narrow channel. Not obvious, but enough to steal warmth later. You loosen the upper tie and re-angle the hide, overlapping it differently so the wind slides past instead of cutting through. You retie it lower, tighter. Immediately, the air changes, subtle, but real. You sit back on your heels and wait a moment, letting the shelter tell you if it's satisfied. It is. Microclimate creation is one of the quietest skills women master here. You don't fight the environment. You negotiate with it. Wind is redirected, not blocked. Smoke is guided, not trapped. Heat is pooled, not blasted. You move toward the sleeping area next, scanning bedding placement. Bodies generate warmth. Where people sleep matters. You shift one sleeping roll slightly closer to the stone wall, where heat lingers longer after sunset. Another. You pull a little farther from the fire pit. Too much heat dries skin, disrupts sleep. You smooth the fur blankets carefully, removing wrinkles that trap cold air. Flat layers insulate better. You learned this by watching frost patterns form differently on uneven surfaces outside. You tuck a rolled piece of hide near the base of the wall, creating a draft barrier. No one will notice it. Everyone will feel it. Near the fire, you reposition a low bench by a few inches. That's all it takes. Too close and it overheats. Too far and it's useless. You test it by sitting briefly, feeling heat rise through layers into your hips and lower back. Comfortable. Restorative. You stand and glance upward, checking the smoke opening again. Light angle has changed. You adjust the movable cover slightly, narrowing it. Smoke still escapes. Warmth stays. Perfect. Someone walks past you carrying a basket and doesn't even realize you've just made the shelter warmer. That's how it works. When shelter is done well, no one thinks about it at all. You move to the entrance next. The hide curtain is heavy, layered, weighted at the bottom with smooth stones. You lift it slightly and feel the wind outside. Stronger now. You lower it back down and add one more stone to the bottom edge, anchoring it better. The curtain settles with a soft thud. You inhale. The smell inside is balanced smoke, herbs, human warmth, no dampness, no sharp cold. Good. You take a moment to rearrange a cluster of stored items, lifting baskets off the ground slightly to avoid moisture. Mold ruins food quietly. You prevent it before it starts. You hear dripping outside again, faster now. Melting frost. That water could pool near the shelter later. You make a mental note to dig a shallow channel before evening, guiding runoff away. You'll do it when the ground softens a bit more. This is what shelter engineering looks like here. Foresight measured in inches and minutes, not blueprints. You sit briefly on a stone near the wall, feeling its stored heat seep into you. Stones are memory keepers. They absorb warmth all day and give it back at night. You place a smaller stone near a sleeping area where someone often complains of cold feet. Problem solved before complaint arrives. You smile faintly at the thought. Children run in and out, lifting the curtain, disrupting airflow. You don't scold. You adapt, You add a second inner flap of lighter fabric, creating an airlock. Cold rushes in less now when the door opens. You test it. Effective. You step back and survey again. The shelter feels different, quieter, softer, sound dampened, heat evened out. This affects sleep, mood, health. Women notice these correlations long before anyone names them. You reach up and adjust a hanging tapestry made from stitched hides and fibers. It's decorative. Yes, patterns matter. Identity matters, but it's also insulation. Tapestries trap air. They soften echoes. They calm minds. You run your fingers over its surface, feeling raised stitching. Someone took time with this. Beauty here is functional. You kneel and brush straw from the floor, redistributing it evenly. Packed straw insulates better than clumps. You learned this from winter nights long ago. You remember cold creeping up from the ground when straw thinned. You don't let that happen again. As you work, you think briefly about how later societies will call this women's space, as if that means lesser. You almost laugh. This space is the engine. Everything else depends on it. You finish with one last slow walk around the shelter, palms open, sensing, no sharp drafts, no damp corners, no overheating, balanced. You take a breath and let your shoulders relax. The shelter is ready for whatever the day brings: heat, cold, rest, illness, sleep. Before moving on, pause with me. Imagine standing inside a space shaped entirely around comfort, warmth, and function. Notice how your body responds when the environment supports you instead of challenging you. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They engineer safety inch by inch. They turn shelter into home. And because of that quiet work, night will come later and people will sleep. You don't announce it, but you feel the shift before it happens, the moment when work becomes social, when bodies slow just enough for voices to fill the space. This is where you move from materials to people, from systems to feelings. This is where you become the glue. You settle near the center of the shelter, close enough to the fire to stay warm, far enough not to dominate it. Position matters. People gravitate toward balance without realizing why. You sit in a way that leaves room beside you, and soon enough, someone takes it. Conversation here isn't loud. It's layered. Murmurs overlap. Laughter ripples briefly, then fades. You listen more than you speak at first, tracking tone, posture, pace. Who's tense? Who's tired? Who's holding something back? Social awareness is a survival skill. Someone complains lightly about a sore shoulder. You respond with humor first, a small joke that reframes it. Laughter loosens more than muscles. Then, quietly, you suggest a warm stone later, maybe a bit of crushed bark. The complaint dissolves into relief before it ever becomes conflict. Two people disagree nearby about where to gather tomorrow. You don't interrupt. You let them speak. Then you ask a simple question that reframes the problem around weather instead of pride. They pause. They adjust. Agreement forms naturally. No winner. No loser. Just resolution. This is emotional labor before the term exists. It's not about control. It's about flow. You notice a young woman sitting slightly apart, shoulders tight, gaze unfocused. You shift closer, not invading, just present. You comment on something neutral, the smell of the herbs, the way the light looks now. She exhales, Sometimes people just need permission to come back into their bodies. Children drift in and out, listening, interrupting, laughing. You weave them into conversation instead of pushing them away. Inclusion prevents misbehavior better than rules ever could. You tell a story, not a grand one, just a small observation about a mistake you once made with food preparation. You exaggerate the ending slightly for humor. People laugh. The lesson lands without instruction. Storytelling is teaching disguised as entertainment. You watch faces as you speak, adjusting tone, pacing. You pause at the right moments. Silence matters as much as words. Silence lets meaning settle. A dog barks outside. Brief tension flickers. You don't react sharply. You stay calm. Others mirror you. The dog settles. Crisis averted before it begins. Calm is contagious. You pass a bowl of food towards someone who hasn't eaten much. You don't comment. You don't ask why. You just make it easy. Care without spotlight preserves dignity. You notice how often people look toward you without realizing it, not for answers, but for emotional cues. Are we safe? Are we okay? Your relaxed posture answers yes. This role isn't assigned. It emerges naturally to those who notice patterns, who care about continuity more than dominance. Women often fill it because they're trained from birth to read rooms, anticipate needs, and smooth edges not because they're weaker, but because this work requires strength of a different kind. You reflect briefly on how fragile groups become without this function. You've seen it, tension escalating, small irritations turning into fractures. Survival isn't just food and fire, it's cohesion. You lean back slightly, resting your hands on your knees. Warmth from the fire reaches you evenly now. Someone else takes over the conversation for a bit, and you're happy to let them. Leadership here is fluid, shared. You listen again. You notice humor returning. Someone teases gently. Trust deepens. These moments matter more than anyone realizes. Groups that laugh together survive longer. As afternoon light softens, you help transition the mood, suggesting rest, suggesting a shift in tasks. You don't order, you nudge. People respond willingly. Before moving on, pause with me. Notice how your body feels when you're in a space where emotional balance is maintained quietly, without force. Feel how safety settles deeper than warmth ever could. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They hold the group together with attention, empathy, timing, and wit. They manage the invisible currents that keep everything else from breaking apart. And when night comes, this work will echo in easier sleep, fewer conflicts, steadier hearts. The shelter grows quieter without anyone declaring it so, and you feel the subtle invitation to rest ripple through the space. Not collapse, not sleep, just pause. Midday rest is not a luxury here, it's calibration. You shift toward a warmer corner where sunlight slips in at a low angle, filtered through hide and fiber. The light feels softer now, less demanding. You sit down slowly, letting your weight sink into a bundle of furs arranged just right. Someone prepared this spot earlier. Maybe you. Maybe another woman who understands how bodies need permission to stop. You lean back, shoulders touching stone that still holds the morning's warmth. The texture is rough, grounding. You exhale and feel your breath deepen naturally. No one rushes you. No one watches. Rest here isn't judged. Around you, the rhythm of the shelter changes. Tools lie still. Children grow quieter, drawn toward naps or calm play. The fire crackles more softly, like it knows to lower its voice. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, just to listen. Wind brushes the outer hides. A bird calls once, then again. Somewhere, water continues its patient movement. You feel time stretch, widen. This pause matters. Women here understand that bodies pushed too hard break quietly later. Midday rest prevents evening mistakes. It preserves strength for what still needs doing. You adjust your layers slightly, loosening wool at the shoulders, keeping fur over your legs. Temperature shifts when you stop moving. You've learned to anticipate that. You tuck a warm stone near your lower back. Relief spreads. Muscles soften. Notice that sensation with me. The moment when tension drains without effort. When warmth pools instead of fighting cold. Someone settles nearby. Not touching, just sharing the space. Companionship without demand. You don't talk. Silence does its work. A child curls up against your side. Thumb in mouth. Eyes already half closed. You don't move them. You shift your arm so it rests lightly over their back. Their breathing syncs with yours. Two nervous systems finding the same rhythm. You think briefly about how later cultures will forget. This will equate rest with laziness, stillness with weakness. You almost smile at the irony. Rest is what keeps this world functioning. Your mind drifts, not racing, not blank. Thoughts come and go, gently plans for later, memories of earlier seasons, small adjustments you'll make before night. You don't cling to them. You let them pass like clouds. You feel hunger settle comfortably instead of sharply. That tells you the meal was balanced. You feel thirst, but not urgency. That tells you hydration is good. Your body gives constant feedback when you listen. You stretch one leg slowly, feeling fabric slide, joints loosen. No cracks, no strain. You're grateful without naming it. The fire shifts slightly as someone adds a single stick. Just one. Enough to maintain heat without waking the shelter. You appreciate the restraint. Overcorrection wastes fuel. You hear soft laughter somewhere quiet, affectionate. Someone sharing a thought without needing response. Sound floats, then dissolves. Midday rest also creates space for reflection. You consider how your work weaves together fire, food, water, shelter, people. None of it stands alone. Each task feeds the next. You don't do everything. You do enough. You notice how your breath has slowed to a deep, even pace. Your shoulders have dropped. Your jaw unclenched. These changes matter more than they appear. Calm bodies think better. Calm groups survive longer. A breeze finds its way inside, cool but gentle. You don't block it. You let it brush your skin, refreshing without chilling. Balance again. You adjust the child's position slightly as they stir, keeping them warm. They settle instantly. Trust reinforced. Time passes without measurement. Sun shifts. Shadows move. You open your eyes and notice light now touching a different part of the wall. That's your cue. not urgent, just information. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb others still resting. You roll your shoulders once, feeling renewed flexibility. The pause worked. Before fully standing, take a moment with me. Imagine resting without guilt, without clock pressure. Feel how your body responds when rest is built into life instead of stolen from it. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They pace the day. They protect energy. They understand that survival is a marathon of small, wise pauses. You rise quietly, ready for the next rhythm the day will ask of you. You step back into motion gently, because now the shelter stirs again, not loudly, not all at once, but like a tide turning. This is the hour when animals drift closer, when boundaries between human and non-human soften into something cooperative. You feel it before you see it, a shift in sound, a change in smell, a new attentiveness in the air. A dog lifts its head near the entrance, ears angled forward. You follow its gaze and notice movement outside, not a threat, just familiarity. Goats browsing near the edge, a few chickens scratching in the dust. Animals that have learned where warmth, scraps, and safety live. You move calmly, because animals read bodies better than words. Your shoulders are relaxed, your breath steady. You crouch slightly to appear smaller, less abrupt. Trust is built in posture. You step outside briefly, the afternoon air brushing your face. The sun sits lower now, warmer than at midday, but less harsh. You call softly, not a command, just a sound of recognition. The dog's tail thumps once. The goats lift their heads, unbothered. Early domestication doesn't look like ownership. It looks like relationship. You kneel and scatter a handful of scraps, peels, fibrous ends, things humans can't digest well. The animals move in closer, careful but eager. You watch their behavior closely. Appetite tells you about health. A sluggish animal warns of illness. An aggressive one signals stress. You file this information away. You notice one goat favoring a leg, slight limp. You frown gently and approach slowly, letting it see your hands. You touch the leg lightly, feeling heat, inflammation. You don't force treatment now. You'll prepare something later, a compress, a rest spot. Awareness comes first. The dog circles you, pressing briefly against your calf. Warm, familiar. You scratch behind its ear without looking. Companionship here is practical and emotional. The dog guards, alerts, cleans scraps, shares warmth at night. In return, it's fed, touched, acknowledged. Women notice these mutual benefits early. You return inside with a shallow bowl of water set aside for animals, placing it where it won't spill, but stays accessible. Placement matters. Everything does. Inside, children follow you, fascinated. Animals blur the line between play and responsibility. You guide a child's hand as they offer water, teaching gentleness. Slow. You murmur. The child slows. The animal drinks. Success. You notice how children learn empathy here, not through lectures, but through daily interaction with beings that respond honestly to treatment. Pull a tail. Get bitten. Stroke gently. Get warmth. Lessons land quickly. You move to check bedding near the wall where animals sometimes sleep at night. You adjust straw, fluffing it, creating a warmer pocket. Animals add heat to the shelter after dark. This is intentional. You manage placement so warmth is shared without chaos. You sprinkle a bit of dried herb into the straw not for scent alone, but to deter pests. You learned which plants fleas avoid. Animals benefit, humans benefit. No one announces it. You hear a low rumble of thunder far away. Your ears tilt instinctively. Storm later. Perhaps. Animals sense it too. The dog paces briefly, then settles closer to you. You rest a hand on its back. Calm transmits both ways. You think about how often later stories erase women's role in domestication, framing it as accidental or male-driven. You almost laugh. This work requires patience, observation, emotional regulation. It happens where food is prepared, where children play, where fire burns steadily. It happens here. You notice feathers scattered near the entrance and make a mental note to gather them later. Insulation, decoration, arrow fletching. Nothing wasted. As afternoon deepens, you guide animals slightly farther from the entrance, anticipating evening drafts. You don't chase. You redirect with body angle, sound, familiarity. They follow willingly. You pause and inhale. The smell now includes fur, earth, hay, smoke. It's layered but balanced, life dense but ordered. You sit briefly on a low stone, letting a chicken hop near your feet. You smile at the absurdity survival often looks like this. Not dramatic, but quietly intimate. Before moving on, pause with me. Imagine the warmth of an animal leaning against you. Notice how your body relaxes when another living being trusts you enough to rest nearby. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They weave animals into daily life not as tools, but as partners in survival. And when night comes, this bond will matter more than anyone can count. You notice the moment learning begins, because it never announces itself. It slips in quietly, riding alongside ordinary tasks, hidden inside repetition and observation. Teaching here isn't a separate activity. It's a layer like wool over linen, always present, always functional. You sit near the work area again, not because you plan to instruct anyone, but because younger eyes naturally drift toward experienced hands. You pick up a strip of hide and a bone needle, and almost immediately, someone settles close enough to watch without crowding. You don't explain yet, you stitch. Your fingers move slowly on purpose, exaggerating the path of the needle just enough to be readable. In, pull, tighten. You keep your posture open, angled slightly outward. Teaching starts with visibility. A child asks why the stitches lean instead of standing straight. You smile softly. So the hide pulls against itself. You say, not the thread. You tug gently to demonstrate. The seam tightens without tearing. The lesson lands. Practical. Memorable. You hand the needle over. Their first attempt is clumsy. Of course it is. The needle slips. The thread tangles. You don't correct immediately. You let them feel the resistance, the frustration, the weight of the material. Learning requires sensation. Then you guide their hand, not taking over, just redirecting pressure. You notice how quickly their muscles adapt when given just enough support. You release. They try again. Better this time. You nod once. Approval doesn't need volume. Around you, others are doing the same, showing, not telling. Someone demonstrates how to test a stone's balance. Someone else shows how to listen for hollow wood. Knowledge travels laterally, not top-down. You realize how deeply this system respects intelligence. Children aren't assumed ignorant. They're assumed untrained. That difference matters. You stand and move toward the shelter entrance, where light offers a better angle. You kneel and point out how shadows change across the ground. This tells you time. You say, and season. You don't over-explain. You let them look. They squint. They notice. Learning happens. You remember being that age, watching hands more than faces, copying movements long before understanding reasons. You learned where to place feet on uneven ground, how to feel when a pot was about to boil over, how to tell if someone was lying just by the way they paused before speaking. Those lessons weren't labeled, they were absorbed. You pick up a handful of herbs and ask the group to smell them. One is sharp, one is sweet, one is bitter. You don't name them. You ask what they remind them of. One says cold mornings. Another says sickness. Another says sleep. All correct. Memory sticks better when it's personal. You explain briefly that bitter often heals, sweet feeds, sharp wakes. You don't say always. You leave room for exceptions. Wisdom survives because it's flexible. A teenager asks why some knowledge isn't shared with everyone. You pause before answering. This matters. Because knowing when to use something is more important than knowing what it is. You say, and because some mistakes can't be undone. They nod slowly. Responsibility understood. You watch how learning shapes posture. How confidence grows, not from praise, but from competence. A child who can fix something stands differently, looks differently, belongs differently. You let someone else teach now, stepping back deliberately. Teaching also means knowing when not to teach. Space allows growth. You sit again, observing. The shelter hums not loud, but purposeful. This is continuity in action. No scrolls, no schools, just bodies passing knowledge forward one careful moment at a time. You think about how fragile this chain is, how easily it breaks if elders are lost, if stories stop being told, if observation is replaced with instruction alone. You guard this process fiercely, even if you never say so aloud. Before moving on, take a moment with me. Imagine learning something not because you're tested on it, but because your life genuinely depends on getting it right. Feel how that kind of learning settles deeper, stays longer. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They teach without classrooms, mentor without titles, and ensure that survival knowledge doesn't just exist, it continues. And because of that, the future doesn't arrive unprepared. You feel the shift before you name it, the moment when function loosens its grip just enough to let beauty breathe. The work is still happening, always happening. But now there is space for something extra, something human, something that doesn't keep you alive directly, yet somehow makes life worth protecting. You reach for a strip of leather dyed a deep, uneven red from crushed berries and clay. The color isn't uniform. It ripples slightly, darker where the mixture pooled, lighter where sun faded it. You like that? Uniformity belongs to later worlds. Here, variation tells a story. You sit near the fire, close enough to see clearly, far enough to avoid scorching the dye. You lay the strip across your lap and smooth it with your palm. Warm, supple, alive with past effort. You feel a small sense of pride, not loud, not boastful, just steady satisfaction. You begin adding simple decoration, a line of small punctures made with a bone awl, evenly spaced, but not rigid. The pattern curves slightly, following the shape of the leather instead of fighting it. That choice matters. Materials prefer cooperation. As you work, someone watches quietly, not to learn survival this time, but to understand expression. You glance up and smile faintly, inviting their presence without comment. You explain nothing. You let the work speak. Decoration here is not excess. It's communication. A pattern might signal adulthood. A color might mark mourning or celebration. A particular knot might mean I belong to this group. Identity is worn, not declared. You pause to thread a few feathers into a cord. Feathers gathered earlier, cleaned, dried. You choose them carefully. Not the largest, not the flashiest. Ones that move gently with breath. Movement draws the eye without demanding it. You test how the cord falls against your chest. You tilt your shoulders slightly. The feathers sway. Good. They won't catch easily. They won't distract during work. Beauty that interferes with function doesn't last long here. You notice how the shelter subtly responds. People glance over, not because it's impressive, but because it's familiar. These touches remind everyone who they are, beyond hunger and cold. You add small beads made from bone and shell, each smoothed by hours of rubbing against stone. You remember making them the patience, the tiny cuts, the sore fingers. You thread them slowly, spacing them with intention. Too close feels crowded. Too far feels empty. This balance mirrors life itself. A child asks why you bother. You consider the question honestly, because this tells a story, you say, and stories help us remember. They nod, not fully understanding, but sensing truth. You think about how later narratives will frame early humans as purely practical, devoid of art until some sudden awakening. You almost laugh again. Creativity is not optional. It's how people endure repetition, loss, uncertainty. You reach for a bit of ochre and mix it with fat on a flat stone, creating a paste. The color deepens as you stir. Earth turned into meaning. You dip your finger and trace a simple mark on your forearm, not for others, just for you. It dries quickly, warm against skin. You inhale. The smell is faintly metallic, grounding. Ritual doesn't need words to be effective. You decorate a child's wrap next, adding a small symbol near the shoulder. Protection, perhaps, or memory. You don't explain. They don't ask. The mark will grow with them. You notice how these small acts anchor people. They remind everyone that they are seen, that they belong to something larger than daily tasks. You set the finished pieces aside and stretch your hands, feeling a pleasant ache. Creation uses different muscles than survival. Both are necessary. Before moving on, pause with me. Imagine choosing a small detail, a color, a pattern, a texture that says something about who you are without needing to explain it. Feel how that expression settles quietly inside you. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They shape identity alongside shelter. They weave meaning into necessity. They ensure that survival doesn't erase humanity. And because of that, The world feels worth waking up to again tomorrow. You feel the day begin to tilt again, subtle but unmistakable light lowering, shadows lengthening, hunger returning in a gentler, more communal way. Evening food is different from midday nourishment. This is not about efficiency alone. This is about closure, reassurance, and togetherness, and you rise and move toward the hearth, where the fire has been quietly maintained all afternoon. The embers glow deep and steady, like they've been waiting for this moment. You coax them just slightly, adding a measured piece of fuel. The flame responds with a soft breath, not a flare. You nod. Perfect. Evening food begins with preparation, but also with gathering. People drift closer without instruction, drawn by smell and warmth. Children settle nearby, calmer now, energy spent. Elders shift into comfortable positions. Animals hover at the edges, hopeful but patient. You take stock of what's available, leftovers from earlier, a few fresh greens brought in not long ago, bones saved for broth, roots still soaking. You don't aim for novelty. You aim for comfort. Familiar flavors calm the nervous system. Women here understand that deeply. You start with the pot, placing it closer to the fire than before. Evening meals want more heat, more depth. You pour in water first, listening to the sound change as it meets warm clay. You add bones next, cracked earlier to release marrow. The smell begins to rise almost immediately. Rich, savory, grounding. You layer ingredients thoughtfully, never all at once. Roots go in early, greens later, herbs last. Timing matters. Overcooked greens lose both nutrition and spirit. You smile at that thought. As the pot warms, you stir slowly, feeling resistance change, thickening, binding. You taste, adjust, taste again. A pinch of salt scraped from stone, a crushed leaf for balance. You trust your tongue. It has learned well. You glance around as you work, making sure everyone has a place. Evening food isn't just eaten, it's shared. You nudge a cushion closer to the fire. You move a bench slightly. You make space without making a point of it. Someone offers to help, and you accept without ceremony. They chop. You stir. Cooperation here is fluid, not hierarchical. Tasks find hands. You notice how conversation changes as cooking continues. Voices soften. Laughter returns, quieter than midday, warmer. Stories surface, not big ones, just observations, shared memories, gentle teasing. Food invites reflection. You scoop a small portion early for a child who's drooping. You blow on it, hand it over. They sip, eyes closing briefly in relief. Nourishment works quickly when bodies trust it. You prepare a separate bowl again for someone who needs lighter fare. You don't explain why. You don't need to. Care doesn't announce itself. As the meal nears readiness, you adjust the fire one last time, pulling a hot stone closer to where people will sit longest. Warmth extends the moment. Cold rushes endings. You ladle the stew carefully, serving in an order that feels natural. No one counts. Everyone notices fairness anyway. You sit only after others are settled. You cradle your own bowl and inhale deeply. Steam carries layers of scent, earth, smoke, herbs, fat. It smells like safety. You take a slow sip. The taste is rounded, patient, complete. This is not food to rush. Notice how your shoulders drop as you eat. Notice how conversation pauses between bites, not from silence, but satisfaction. Animals receive their share, too. Scraps tossed deliberately, not randomly. They eat and settle, adding their warmth to the shelter's hum. You listen more than you speak now, letting the group's energy unwind. Evening meals are punctuation marks. They tell the day it can rest. You think briefly about how this ritual will repeat, night after night, with small variations. How memory will attach itself to flavors, smells, firelight. How people will remember feeling safe more than they remember specific words. As bowls empty, you scrape and rinse them immediately. Cleanliness prevents tomorrow's problems. You hang them to dry where smoke will keep pests away. You wipe the pot and set it aside, already thinking about morning broth. Continuity never sleeps. Before moving on, pause with me. Imagine eating slowly, surrounded by warmth and quiet voices, knowing that tomorrow's hunger is already being considered. Feel how that certainty settles in your chest. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They turn food into ritual. They close the day gently, ensuring that bodies and minds move toward night without fear. The fire burns lower now. Evening has arrived. As the evening settles fully into place, the shelter grows quieter in a different way. Not sleepy yet, but inward. This is when aches speak up, when small injuries finally ask for attention, when emotions loosen their grip just enough to be felt. You notice it immediately. You always do. Healing begins with noticing. You move toward the edge of the firelight where shadows soften faces instead of hiding them. You sit close enough to offer warmth, far enough to give space. People come to you without asking, or sometimes they don't come at all. They simply linger nearby, hoping you'll see. And you do. Someone flexes a hand a little too carefully. You catch it. You gesture them over with a tilt of your head. Nothing dramatic. They sit. You take their hand gently, turning it palm up. The skin is dry, cracked in one place. Not serious yet, but it could be. You warm a bit of fat between your fingers, mixing it with crushed herb calendula. Soothing, protective. You rub it into the skin slowly, deliberately. Touch here is medicine. Warmth opens tissue. Pressure calms nerves. You feel tension ease under your thumbs before they even say anything. You don't ask what happened. The body tells you enough. Nearby, an older woman shifts, wincing as she lowers herself. You prepare a warmed stone wrapped in cloth and place it near her hip. You don't put it directly on skin. You know better. Too much heat draws inflammation. Gentle warmth invites circulation. She sighs, long, grateful. You sit back briefly, scanning again. Healing here is triage, not because it's rushed, but because attention must be distributed wisely. Small problems get handled before they grow. Big ones get patience, presence, time. A child approaches with watery eyes, not injured, just overwhelmed. You open your arms without comment. They lean in immediately, forehead pressing against your chest. You rock gently, side to side. Rhythm steadies breath. Steady breath steadies thought. You hum again, the same low sound from earlier. Your chest vibrates. The child's shoulders drop. Emotional regulation isn't abstract here. It's physical. You glance at the fire and adjust it slightly, lowering the flame. Bright light can agitate. Softer light calms. Healing is environmental as much as it is personal. Someone brings you a small cut shallow, but bleeding persistently. You clean it with water first. Always water. Then you sprinkle powdered bark, watching the blood slow. You bind it with clean fiber, snug but not tight. You explain nothing unless asked. Trust replaces instruction. You wash your hands carefully afterward, rinsing away blood and plant residue. Clean hands prevent illness. You've seen what happens when they don't. As you work, you reflect quietly on how much healing here relies on reassurance. Pain worsens when people are afraid. Fear tightens bodies. Calm loosens them. You offer calm freely. Someone begins to talk about loss, perhaps, or worry. You listen without interrupting. You don't rush to fix emotions. You let them move through. When they pause, you place a hand over theirs. That's enough. The shelter responds. Others lower their voices. Movement slows. Healing spreads outward. Not because you command it, but because people mirror care. You prepare a small drink, warm water with a trace of honeyed root, for sleep, for nerves. You offer it to someone who hasn't rested well lately. They accept gratefully. You think about how later cultures will divide healing into medicine and psychology, body and mind. You smile softly at the unnecessary complexity. Here, it's one system. You stretch your own hands briefly, feeling fatigue creep in. You tend to yourself too, rubbing oil into sore knuckles, warming fingers near the fire. Caregivers must remain functional. You've learned that lesson the hard way. Before the night deepens further, you do one more scan, listening, watching, sensing. No sharp breaths, no restless shifting, no brewing conflict. Good. You settle back onto a cushion, letting yourself rest without disengaging fully. You remain available, present, but not tense. This balance matters. Before moving on, pause with me. Imagine being in a place where care arrives before pain turns into fear, where touch is trusted, and where healing feels like being seen rather than being fixed. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They mend bodies, steady hearts, and prevent small suffering from becoming large. They carry knowledge in their hands and calm in their presence. Night is almost ready now, and because of this quiet work, it will be gentler. You feel the world thin slightly as night approaches, not darkness yet, but a softening at the edges of things. Sounds travel farther. Light grows selective. This is the hour when meaning steps forward, when people feel the need to mark time rather than just move through it. Ritual arrives quietly, like a familiar guest. You don't announce anything. You never have to. People sense it. They drift closer together, bodies angling inward, voices lowering. The fire is coaxed into a steady, low glow, not bright, not dying, just enough to hold attention. Ritual here isn't performance, it's alignment. You reach for a small bundle tied with cord, simple, unremarkable, powerful only because everyone recognizes it. Inside are objects gathered over time: a smooth stone from a birth, a feather from a successful hunt long ago, a strip of dyed fiber from someone now gone, memory made tangible. You place the bundle near the fire, not in it, heat without destruction. balance again. You sit, palms resting open on your knees. Others mirror you without instruction. Children quiet instinctively. Animals settle. The shelter feels like it's holding its breath. You begin not with words, but with breath. One slow inhale, one long exhale. You let the sound be audible. Others follow. Soon, the shelter breathes together. This is not spiritual in an abstract sense. It's physiological. Shared breathing synchronizes bodies. Calm spreads. You pick up the smooth stone and pass it slowly to the person beside you. They hold it for a moment, feeling weight, texture, then pass it on. The stone moves hand to hand, grounding everyone in the present while quietly carrying the past. As it travels, people speak if they feel moved to, not speeches, just fragments, gratitude for warmth, a memory of someone absent, hope for tomorrow's weather. Silence is welcome too. Silence often says more. When the stone reaches you again, you don't speak. You place it back by the fire. Not every ritual requires contribution. Presence counts. You reach for the feather next, lifting it briefly so firelight catches its edge. It shimmers softly. You lower it again. No explanation needed. Symbols work because they're shared. You notice how ritual regulates emotion. Grief has a place to land. Gratitude has a container. Anxiety is named gently or allowed to pass unspoken. Nothing spills over. You sprinkle a small pinch of herbs onto the fire lavender, rosemary just enough to scent the air. The smell changes immediately. Comfort deepens. Memory awakens. Scents carry stories more reliably than words. A child asks quietly why you do this. You consider, then answer simply, "So we remember we're not alone." The child nods. That's enough. You think about how later cultures will call this superstition or myth-making. You almost smile. This is emotional hygiene, mental health before it has a name. You glance around the circle, noting faces softened by firelight. Lines ease. Eyes reflect flame. People look like themselves again, not just workers, not just survivors. You end the ritual the same way it began with breath. One slow inhale. One long exhale. You let the moment dissolve naturally, not abruptly. People stretch. Someone chuckles softly. Life resumes, but something has shifted. You gather the objects and tie the bundle again, returning it to its place. Ritual is complete when it's put away properly. Overuse dulls meaning. You notice how the shelter feels calmer now, more cohesive. Conflicts eased before they could form. Worries named or released. Sleep will come easier. Before moving on, pause with me. Imagine marking the end of a day, not with noise or distraction, but with shared stillness and meaning. Feel how that kind of ritual settles you from the inside out. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They anchor time. They give shape to emotion. They make space for loss, hope, and continuity without dogma, without spectacle. And because of that, the night feels held, not empty. Night does not fall all at once. It settles in layers, the way cold does, the way sleep does gradually, deliberately. You feel it in your bones before the sky fully darkens. This is when vigilance becomes gentle but constant, when comfort and protection blur into the same task. You rise quietly and begin the familiar circuit of the shelter. You don't rush. Rushing at night invites mistakes. First, the fire. You kneel and study it the way you did at dawn, but now you're reading a different language. The embers glow low and steady, perfect for heat without drawing too much attention. You nudge one log inward, pull another back. The crackle softens, sparks settle. Fire at night should whisper, not speak. You add a single hot stone to the edge of the sleeping area, wrapped in hide so it releases warmth slowly. Not too close. Burns happen when people roll in their sleep. You place it where feet tend to chill first. You've noticed that pattern over years. You stand and let your eyes adjust to the darker interior. Shapes blur. Movement becomes suggestion. You train yourself to see differently now. Peripheral vision. Contrast. Rhythm. You move to the entrance and lift the hide just enough to feel the air outside. Cooler. Still. The wind has shifted slightly since afternoon, now coming from the north. You adjust the weighted stones accordingly, angling the curtain to block drafts without sealing the shelter too tightly. Smoke still escapes. Heat stays. Balance. You pause and listen. Night sounds are information. An owl calls distant, unconcerned. Good. Insects hum steadily. No sudden silences. No frantic movement. The land feels settled. You lower the hide again and run your fingers along its edge, checking for gaps. One small tear catches your nail. You make a mental note to repair it tomorrow. For now, you fold the hide just so, overlapping the weak spot. Temporary solutions are still solutions. You move through the sleeping area next, stepping carefully to avoid waking anyone. You watch chests rise and fall. You listen to breathing, shallow, deep, uneven. You notice one person stirring, brow furrowed. You adjust their blanket slightly, tucking it around their shoulders. Their breathing deepens almost immediately. You don't wake them. You don't need to. A child shifts and kicks off a layer in sleep. You replace it gently. Children lose heat faster. You learned that long ago. Animals settle in their places. Now the dog curls near the entrance, positioned intentionally. Early warning system. Warmth source. Companion. You give it a brief touch as you pass. It opens one eye, then closes it again. Trust confirmed. You scatter a final small handful of ash near the fire pit. It dulls scent trails. Predators rely on smell. Women learned this trick watching animals avoid old burn sites. You step to the edge of the shelter where tools are stored and move anything sharp or heavy out of nighttime pathways. Injuries happen more easily in the dark. Prevention is easier than healing. You take a moment to sit near the fire, not to rest fully, but to be present. Night security isn't standing guard with a weapon. It's awareness spread thin and wide, like a net. You let your hearing expand. You notice the way sound bounces differently now. You note where echoes change. You memorize the night's baseline so you'll notice immediately if something doesn't belong. You think briefly about how later stories imagine fear dominating the night, but fear isn't useful here. Attention is. You adjust your own layers, adding fur over your shoulders now that movement has slowed. You feel warmth pool again. You sip a small amount of water, just enough to stay comfortable without waking later needing more. Night planning includes the bladder too. Experience teaches that lesson quickly. You make one final circuit, slower this time. Everything feels in place. The shelter hums quietly. Fire breathing, bodies sleeping, animals settled. Before you lie down, you pause at the center of the space. You place one hand against the stone wall and one against the packed earth floor. Cold above, warm below. Stability all around. You take a slow breath. Night is ready. And because of this quiet vigilance, these small, thoughtful actions, everyone else can sleep without worry. They don't know every choice you made. They don't need to. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They carry awareness into the dark. They make night safe without drama, without recognition. You ease yourself down at last, positioning your body where warmth lingers and sound carries just enough. Your eyes close, but your senses remain gently alert. The fire glows, the shelter holds, the night passes. Sleep doesn't happen by accident here. It is prepared for, arranged, invited the way you would welcome someone important into your space. You feel that responsibility settle over you now, not as weight, but as quiet focus. You rise once more, moving softly through the shelter, because before bodies rest, the ground must be right. You kneel beside the sleeping area and begin adjusting bedding with practiced care. First, the base layer packed straw and grasses. You redistribute it evenly, smoothing thin spots, fluffing compressed areas. Uneven ground steals warmth and interrupts sleep. You learned that lesson on a winter night long ago, waking stiff and exhausted. You don't let it happen again. Over the straw, you reposition hides, aligning the fur direction with the body's length. Fur insulates better when it lies with the grain. Small detail, big difference. You tug gently at the corners, removing folds that trap cold air. You place a thicker hide at shoulder level for someone who sleeps curled. Another you tuck closer to the feet of someone who always complains of chill. You don't ask. You've noticed. You step back and assess the arrangement, head tilted slightly, eyes half closed. You're reading the space now, imagining bodies settling, rolling, breathing. You adjust one more layer by a hand's width. There. Better. You move to your own sleeping place last. Always last. Care flows outward before inward. You lower yourself slowly, testing the ground with your weight. Too firm. You slide a folded hide beneath your hip. Perfect. Pressure eases. Spine aligns. You exhale. You add fur over your legs but leave your arms freer for now. Heat rises through your core first. You'll adjust later. Sleep here is responsive, not rigid. You reach for a small bundle near your head, herbs wrapped in cloth. You squeeze it gently, releasing scent. Lavender and mint drift upward. The smell signals your body that it's safe to let go. You've conditioned yourself this way over years. Ritual becomes biology. You place the bundle near your pillow area, not directly under your nose. Too strong overwhelms. Balance again. You turn slightly onto your side, pulling one knee up, settling into a position that protects your abdomen while keeping your back warm. Your body chooses this automatically. Evolution writes itself into posture. Nearby, someone shifts and sighs in their sleep. You listen briefly, then their breathing deepens. You smile faintly in the dark. You check the fire one last time with your eyes only. No movement needed. It glows steadily, contained. The hot stones will last until morning. You let your hearing expand again, but softer now. You're no longer scanning for threat. You're listening for reassurance, the steady breathing of others, the gentle rustle of animals, the muted pop of embers. This soundscape is your lullaby. You think, briefly, about how much of this will never be remembered as work. No one will list bedding arrangement or sleep positioning in heroic tales. And yet, without this, tomorrow would begin tired, irritable, careless. Sleep is the hinge between days. Women guard it carefully. You adjust your blanket once more, pulling it up to your shoulders, tucking it under your chin. You leave your hands free, palms resting against warm fabric. You feel heat build slowly, evenly. Notice that sensation with me. The moment when your body stops bracing, when muscles release one by one, when the ground feels like support instead of resistance. Your breath slows naturally. Inhale, exhale, longer now, deeper. You think about the day not in detail, just in impression. Fire, water, food, people, animals, meaning everything connected, nothing wasted. You feel a quiet satisfaction, not pride, completion. Sleep approaches not like collapse, but like descent into warm water, gradual, safe. Before you fully drift, take a moment with me. Imagine lying down, knowing that the space around you has been shaped for rest, that warmth, safety, and care have already been accounted for. Feel how that certainty softens you. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They prepare rest as carefully as survival. They understand that sleep is not the absence of work, but its continuation in another form. Your eyes close. The shelter breathes. Tomorrow waits, patient. You hover in that quiet space just before sleep, fully claims you not quite dreaming, not quite awake, and in this stillness, something larger comes into focus. Not a task, not a chore, a realization. You are part of a chain. Your body lies warm and supported, breath slow, but your mind drifts gently backward and forward at the same time. You sense all the women who have done this before you, not as individuals with names, but as continuity. Hands adjusting fires, fingers testing water, voices calming children, eyes reading weather, movements so practiced they became invisible. You are not alone in this moment. You never were. You feel the shelter around you again, not as walls, but as an extension of collective memory. Every adjustment made today echoes older ones. Every choice refined by someone who lived, learned, and passed knowledge forward without ever calling it legacy. You shift slightly, feeling how the bedding responds perfectly. That comfort exists because someone once noticed discomfort and refused to accept it as inevitable. That refusal is inheritance. You think about how much of this world runs on anticipation. Women here don't wait for crises. They sense them forming. Hunger is prevented. Cold is redirected. Conflict is softened. Illness is intercepted early. Survival isn't reactive. It's preventative. That might be the greatest misunderstanding of all. You inhale slowly and notice how your chest rises without effort. Air is warm enough, clean enough, safe enough. That didn't happen by chance. You hear a soft snore somewhere nearby. A small chuckle escapes you, barely audible. There's humor in this too. Humanity has always been slightly ridiculous, even at its most fragile. Your mind drifts to the future now, not tomorrow, but centuries ahead. You imagine people telling simplified stories about this time. Harsh, brutal, primitive. You almost want to correct them. Almost. But you realize something else instead. This knowledge doesn't need defending. It survives because it works. The rhythm you live today, wake, warm, gather, prepare, soothe, teach, rest will repeat, slightly altered, slightly adapted, always evolving, always anchored by women who understand systems, bodies, and relationships intuitively and deliberately. You feel pride rise gently, not personal pride, but collective, a deep appreciation for competence, for attention, for care, done without applause. You think about how resilience is often portrayed as toughness, hardness, endurance through suffering. But what you live today tells a different story. Resilience here is softness applied strategically, warmth offered early, flexibility instead of force. You shift again, finding the exact position where your spine settles. There. Perfect. Your thoughts slow further, edges blurring. You no longer need to hold the day in your mind. It has already folded itself into memory. Before sleep takes you fully, take one last moment with me. Imagine carrying forward not just the image of survival, but the feeling of it, the calm competence, the quiet intelligence, the steady care. Let that feeling sink into you. This is what caveman women actually do all day. They don't just survive, they stabilize, they humanize, they endure by making endurance gentler. Your breath deepens again. The fire dims to embers. The shelter holds fast. Sleep arrives. You rest fully now, no longer hovering between moments, but drifting softly into the kind of calm that feels earned rather than forced. The day you lived, every quiet adjustment, every small kindness, every thoughtful pause settles around you like an extra layer of fur pulled gently up to your shoulders. Your breathing is slow and even. Inhale, exhale. You feel how safe the body becomes when it trusts its environment, when nothing sharp presses, when warmth is steady, when the night has been prepared instead of endured. The fire is only embers now, glowing low and patient, releasing heat a little at a time. Stones nearby hold the memory of warmth, ready to give it back whenever the air cools. Animals sleep close, their bodies rising and falling in rhythms older than words. The shelter itself feels alive, not watching, not judging, just holding. You don't need to plan tomorrow. Tomorrow already knows how to arrive. Your muscles loosen further, one by one, as if each has finally received permission to rest. The hands that worked all day are still. The eyes that watched for danger are closed. The mind that carried systems and people and memory releases its grip. You notice how quiet competence feels different from exhaustion. This is not collapse. This is completion. If thoughts drift through, you let them pass without catching them, like sparks lifting briefly from embers, then fading into dark. Nothing needs solving. Nothing needs proving. You are warm. You are supported. You are allowed to sleep. And as you sink deeper, you carry something gentle with you, the reminder that humanity has always survived, not just through strength, but through care, through people who noticed, adjusted, softened, and prepared the way so others could rest. Let that thought fade now. The shelter breathes, the night holds, you drift. Sweet dreams.